Hey everyone, welcome to the day 7 update of the Fruitarian Diet. So to get things off the bat real quick with the experiment thus far, let me just look at some of the data and numbers real quick. So thus far, I've lost 11 pounds of fat. I've done some caliper tests and some different maxes, and doesn't seem to appear that I've lost muscle mass. Seems I've lost a little bit in terms of the diameter of the arms and legs, but from the measurements, it looks like that appears to be fat. Other than that, the experiment's going really well. For those of you that are followers on Instagram, you'll know that today is Water Fast Monday for myself and others participating. So not eating today. So we'll see how things go. In terms of the overall body weight that I started off at, I was at about 180 pounds, and today I'm at 169. So looking at everything right now, it hasn't changed. Yesterday I was also at 169 and lost a pound from the day before. So today I'm actually at a 0 loss. I don't really see that lasting too long, especially after the water fast. So I expect to lose maybe 2 pounds, about that, of fat, if maybe just a pound. I have done some exercises today. And then if you are water fasting, just for your own insight and knowledge, it's always best to do some type of explosive exercise. Definitely work out for a little bit, just because it's kind of kickstarts the body to remember, oh, we can't lose muscle mass. So it's one of those things where it's your body is, you're training it to essentially go back into what you would assume to be more of like a nomadic lifestyle. So it's a starvation mode. You're in between, you're on your hunt, if you want to think about it like that. So, but realistically, I mean, 11 pounds down, it really hasn't been difficult. I've just been, drinking my smoothie and again, eating as much fruit as I want. The other day I had some mangoes and more strawberries, and it was super bomb. And then when looking at the body fat percentage, I probably lost around 3 to 4% in terms of my body fat. Now, again, I notice it personally in my face. My sides almost instantly shrunk down. I don't feel like I've changed too much in my legs. I mean, I guess you could say maybe because they feel a little bit tighter in terms of no jiggle on top. And then same thing in the arms. Now, the really cool stuff is the blood work. I got my blood work back from my phase 2. Now, phase 1 was my normal healthy eating, involving intermittent fasting, my usual. I usually eat within an 8-hour window. So it was my intermittent fasting practice was going on. And then recently I actually just got back into that. Sorry, my wife's getting back, so I'm a little distracted. But so again, just go back to the blood work. So phase 1 was that first portion where I was water fasting, doing my normal thing. And then phase 2 was the gluttony phase. This was to kind of get a good baseline in terms of what a typical body would look like. And I really just used the normal American diet, which is really high in sugar and salt and fat, more so trans fat and saturated fats. Now, the important thing about that is this is just a 3-month window, and I was pretty healthy before. But in terms of just seeing the blood work that I got back, I've already seen some things in my eyes that are pretty alarming. In terms of my glucose levels, they've spiked pretty heavily in terms of that phase 1 to phase 2. Again, phase 2 being that gluttony period. And again, I would assume this is pretty much what a normal person would have. And even then, I'm still somewhat on the lower end of a high range. But for my own self and what my numbers were before, things jumped up anywhere from 10 to 15 milligrams per deciliter, which may not be too much. But in terms of how my body was and how consistent it was throughout the testing and throughout my previous health, to me that was a big kind of red flag to show the differences and impact that the fatty American diet has had. In addition, my sodium and carbon dioxide levels also went up about that same 10 to 15 milligrams per deciliter, which is pretty interesting. Now, the curious ones that I'm really excited to kind of look into, and I have a doctor's appointment later on in the month to speak with my physician about it, and it's my alanine aminotransferase levels, or ATL. Or ALT, sorry about that, and my bilirubin levels. Those went up, and I'm actually considered in the high level for those. Now, one thing that I'm thinking of that could lead to this, considering those are both proteins and chemicals, amino acids that are involved with the liver, I could see it being a fatty liver issue where a lot of the fat that I did gain was more in the abdominal region and it went to the liver. And this is really important because that's one of the first phases of cardiovascular diseases. You could say obesity, which is now being pushed to be called a clinical disease. And then realistically, it's just a level to show that my liver is just not as efficient as it used to be. Now, in terms of my cholesterol levels, my HDL, high density lipoprotein, my low density lipoproteins, those also kind of changed. My high density, which is the healthy cholesterol, actually went down. And my low density, which is the unhealthy, went up, which is what I assumed would happen. But considering the impacts that could have on overall health, this was just 3 months, and I pretty much got all my levels to jump up 10 milligrams per deciliter again, 10 to 15 in certain test ranges from the lab results. And to me, that's pretty fascinating. It's also just goes to show how dangerous junk food can be. I mean, really, if you want to think about what it took for me to get to that point within 3 months, it took ice cream almost every night, a stereotypical dessert post dinner. And then really just not listening to the body and eating past that full point. Now, the real change up that came in terms of my own experience was just how I physically felt and how I emotionally felt. It's very it's very challenging when you're used to being in an athletic state and then you go into a period of, I guess you would say, slothfulness or lethargy. And I think that had a lot more to do with obviously the way I was doing this experiment, how I wanted just to focus more on just light joint work to make sure I was still flexible and I didn't hurt myself when I was training others. But also that I wasn't just completely cutting out exercise because I would have gone crazy. But even then, in terms of the maxes that I've done and tested, so before the experiment in phase 1, I was able to do 1,000 jumps in terms of consistent jump roping in about 9 minutes or less. And it was actually getting faster and faster before I started the phase 2. And with my phase 2 test, I was at 16 minutes to do my 1,000 jump ropes. And it wasn't the fact that my pacing had changed. It was just the fact that my cardiovascular health was shot. I was so winded so fast, max heart rate within the first few hundred. And I essentially had to do them 100 at a time, when before I could bang out 500, take a quick break, bang out the next 500 real quick. Same thing with my push-ups, my squats, and different max tests in terms of the lifts, power clean, deadlift, et cetera, my numbers and amounts pretty much went in half. In lifting, it wasn't too far off. I lost about 25 to 30 pounds in my maxes. But my push-ups per minute, sit-ups per minute, squats per minute, those types of things, all those numbers were halved. And again, that has to do with, I believe, the cardiovascular health got shot because, I mean, I wasn't really doing as much as I would used to. And then again, with a lot of the emotional and physical stuff, and even the mental activity that was going on in the phase 2 or the gluttony phase, it's really eye-opening to see how heavy I felt. And I don't mean that in a sense of physically, because obviously, yeah, physically I felt heavier. Things were uncomfortable in terms of my clothes, but emotionally and mentally, I think those are the biggest things to look at, that it's such an impact that our diet has on our body. It's insane to really recognize. And for me, I know that, anger, things like that came up. I felt like my emotional state was more wobbly. It definitely took more consistent meditation and very intensive focus to be aware of the emotions and mental thought patterns that were coming up within my experience, versus now it's my internal experience is very quiet. If there's any type of anger that comes up, it's from selfish behavior on others. If there's any type of thoughts, negative thoughts that come up, it's usually when I'm watching a show that's like reality TV, like gossipy type of judgmental stuff. Other than that, my internal experience is actually very calm and quiet. And that was one of the big things that I was actually testing with this experiment, was to see how my own state of being and well-being was, versus when I was doing my water fast for that 4.5 days and I was just, wasn't eating. And then I started getting back into like food by eating fruit. So I think that's one of the powerful things that I think we really need to start exploring in terms of, science, psychology, spirituality, all these different types of practices, because we all know that, when you exercise, you get endorphins, serotonin start to release and you're happier. But it's not just that level of exercise. I haven't, in terms of the elation that I feel with exercise, yeah, that's pretty normal. But there is an elation you get with food. And it's the same thing in terms of how it does the adverse or negative effect. It also acts as a depressant. There was so many times where I had sad thoughts out of nowhere. And for me, as a practitioner, meditation and, really diving deep into the spiritual waters for years, these were things that were red flags for me. That was just like, why am I experiencing this? I haven't experienced this in so long. It's literally been years. And when I started looking at it, there definitely has to be more of a unified system that we think. Because if you think about the body and the emotional states and your own kind of internal presence, there's such fine tuning, and it's a huge balancing act to have your body and your system of operation really function in life. And when you start to give it bad fuel, in this sense, junk food, things like that, like if you were to give a poor quality fuel to a car, you'll notice that it doesn't run as well. And it's the same thing with the human body. And again, the most wild thing that I've gained from this experience thus far, and mind you, it's only day 7, has been the difference in the emotional state, the difference in the mental states. In terms of cravings, it was actually very funny. The moment I stopped eating ice cream and switched to fruit, those, I guess you would say those fatty, like salty foods they're not craved anymore. There's no type of, oh, that smells so good. It's actually the only thing that really sounds appetizing and, again, only really tastes good to me right now is fruit. So I think, obviously I'm going to continue with this experiment, but I really think that as a society, we really need to start to explore this more, because you are what you eat has been a saying for so long. And through this own little personal experiment that I've been doing for, the first part of this month, it's been fascinating. I'm eating probably, more than the recommended 2,000 calories. But again, like 1,500 of that is coming from a smoothie with plenty of seeds, nuts, some leafy greens, and again, mostly fruit, more than 70% fruit, 75% fruit roughly. And then just eating as much fruit as I want. I've been so full these past like 6 days of eating, yet I haven't felt heavy and sluggish. And it hasn't gotten to a point where, like if you're eating, French fries, fried foods or turkey or something like that, where you're eating so much and all of a sudden when you're done, you just pass out. No, it doesn't do that. You feel light, but you're still energetic. And then even today in the water fasting, I've actually found that, because I've practiced water fasting before, this experiment, both phase 1 and 2. In the water fast, I've had more energy, and it's really interesting in terms of the craving for water. I'm almost finished off with one of these, and I've actually stopped drinking water for the past like hour, but I'm probably going to finish that off and then probably drink another glass, maybe trick my body and drink some warm water like my tea. But all I can say is, if you are ever interested in, doing a fruitarian diet, water fasting, give it a shot. You never really know how your body will respond to it. And all I can tell right now is that my body's doing fine. It's flourishing. In terms of the exercises I've been doing, my workout, my recovery time has been faster. I haven't felt as sore as in previous times, especially with heavy lifting. Because mind you, this is the first time I've done heavy lifting in 3 months, like heavy lifting, like max weights. And I didn't feel that sore afterwards. And I remember, comparing this to past experiences from sports in high school all the way up through college and past college, my body would ache. It'd be like a day or 2 days. But one thing that I picked up on since, switching to a vegetarian diet nearly 5 or 6 years ago, recovery times have gotten quicker. And then again, it's kind of no shock to me now that my recovery times are almost non-existent. I don't really need them because your body heals itself so quickly. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the month plays off, more so considering depending on how much weight I drop. At the end of my 4.5 day water fast, I was at about 159 pounds. So I know that's kind of the limit that I could push my body in terms of weight. So I'm at 169 right now. I've already dropped 11 pounds in fat. Now that's just fat. Um, if you want to think about it, there might be like a small percentage, like maybe like a fraction of a percent, that may be muscle mass loss. But in terms of my strength gains and everything already in the first week, I haven't lost anything, I've gained. So again, I mean, I really implore everyone to really just use your life as an experiment. This is all just one crazy experience that we're living, and it's really what you make of it. So I know this may be a ridiculous task for many meat eaters and things like that, but I want all of you guys to know that it's like I wasn't born a vegetarian. I wasn't born a vegan. I wasn't born a fruitarian. I actually grew up on a lot of soul food. Now, fried foods, fatty foods, frozen dinners, like not frozen dinners, but more so like frozen foods, pizzas, hot pockets, curly fries, chicken fingers, the works. And realistically, like, a lot of like processed meats, deli meats, that type of stuff. So it's like I've lived almost, when we go, I'm trying to think, when did we go vegetarian? When we were 22. This is my producer / wife in the background. Yeah, so about 23 was the time when I really switched to being full vegetarian. And even in my last year of college, so when I was about 22, I slowly weaned off meat for about a year. I was essentially eating a normal portion of meat, which would be just your palm. Now, again, one thing that's really important to think about is that none of these things happen overnight. If you want to experiment, try doing this 1 day a week. Try doing it 2 days a week. Try water fasting, like I've recommended before. Try water fasting until lunch. Maybe push your lunch back. Maybe even just have a later dinner, or push your water fast until dinner and just have one big meal. But again, if you want something in your life, make it happen. You're fully capable of doing it. And I've literally been doing nothing but eating fruit, and I've lost 11 pounds. Now, if you're looking for a tasty and quick way to do that, go to your local grocery store. If you find fruits too expensive, there's so many different options in terms of like grocery outlet. I know in Seattle we have Rising Sun Produce. There's a ton of different areas where they sell these types of foods really cheap because they're meant to be consumed the day of. So if you have a low budget and you're still looking to experiment with these things, look around. You never know what options are going to be available in your area. And one thing to actually think about is go to your different cultural areas. If you have an Asian market, an Ethiopian market, whatever culture you have around you, capitalize on that, because there's always going to be options that they have that you wouldn't even know of. And you never know how it's going to change. So again, in terms of everything right now, 11 pounds down, muscle mass up, technically fat percentage down. The fatty liver issue, obviously, I think I want to explore that a little bit more just to see. I mean, I could be wrong with that, but just considering the ALT and bilirubin, those are both associated with the liver, somewhat of the kidneys, but I think it might be liver more than anything, just in terms of breaking down fat and fat storage. But other than that, those are the quick summary results, and I'm really looking forward to see how the rest of this month is going. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos, and then always check out the Instagram page that we have. It's filled with different insights and nuggets of knowledge and inspiration. And other than that, I hope everyone has a great day, and if you're doing Veganuary, keep pushing. You're doing excellent. Have a good one, everybody.